Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Welcome to a bonus episode, I guess. It's like 2.5.
More of an urgent than anything else, I think. I guess you might have heard in our first episode we did a little intro. This is on our pilot episode to say about everything that's going on in the world right now, not coronavirus related, with sort of the death of George Floyd and stuff. And we were asking people to consider donating to Black Lives Matter. We usually, starting out, even though it's only been 2 episodes, we kind of wanted to focus on the fact that we just wanted to talk about what we liked and not get political, I guess, and really just talk about the things we love and why we love them. But because of the escalation on what's happening, we feel that we need to use our privileged position to ask other people to listen to more important voices at the moment. So we're going to be talking through our favourite black artists that we're listening to at the moment, and encourage all the people that are listening to this to go and listen to them at this time, because it's the most important time to do that, rather than listen to us, a bunch of white people.
Definitely. That's the other thing as well. We're 3 privileged white people who live in like one of the most middle class counties in Britain. Probably the most, maybe. We're not gonna sort of we're not going to go too much in depth into sort of, institutional racism and all that sort of stuff, because it's something that we have no experience with, really.
The historical and social and literally day-to-day context that the majority of white people bring to this conversation is so inadequate. So that's why we're kind of asking everyone to be like, here is a bunch of artists that are way more important and way more qualified to talk about this than we are, so go and listen to them.
Definitely.
Yeah.
We also, I think we said as well that while we're going to talk about them, we're not gonna rank them like we have with other stuff, because that kind of feels wrong, and then kind of goes against the whole point of this podcast. I've got lots of honorary mentions as well for this one, just because as I was going through it, I was like, I love this person, I love what this person's done. So do you mind if I say what we spoke about last night, or I can edit it out if you want?
That's absolutely fine.
Anna was speaking to me last night when she was looking for her black artists, and she was saying that she was worried about doing this episode because she didn't want to say the wrong thing and speak out of place, and I thought it was just super interesting. And
I'm exactly the same.
I was like, I don't want to pick a person and then someone's like, well, hang on, this person did this so many years ago, I can't believe you've chosen this person, and I just...
Well, I mean, I have people from literally all different backgrounds and different forms of art. There's no one that's it's like we said about the ranking thing, there's no one in here that's really more important.
I think that's part of this whole wider conversation as a whole. It's not solely focused on what black artists you want to champion. It's about everyone saying okay, well, it's about everyone just calming down a bit, I think. And definitely. just saying, well, okay, I understand your point of view, but did you know this was the actual context of that? We shouldn't feel scared to do that. There has to be understanding on both parties to be like, oh, I understand your point of view, and I get that you're trying to promote that. But I guess you didn't know this. There has to be politeness from both ends.
And I also think it's important with the race with anything, not just with race, but also using that as a focus point. I think it's really important to not be afraid to say the wrong thing, as long as you're also willing to say, oh, I'm sorry if I spoke out of place. But then that's a two-way street, because if you speak out of place, you need the other party to be able to say well, did you know that you spoke out of place, and maybe you should say this, or maybe you shouldn't say this. I think it's a bit of understanding on both parties. But obviously, with everything going on at the moment, that's quite hard to do at the moment, because there are people that maybe just don't understand the issue as much because they haven't seen it, but then there's also people that are there are police officers that kneel on black people's necks and kill them. So it's a difficult thing to push without upsetting anyone. So
there's so much tension everywhere that any conversation to do with these difficult topics just has to come from a place of I want to understand more, or I want to make other people understand more in a relaxed and polite way.
Definitely,
I guess.
Well, now we've gotten the political stuff out the way. Shall we?
Yeah.
Shall we get on with a proper?
Yeah, let's do it.
A proper podcast about our favourite black artists. Does anyone want to go first?
Sure, I don't mind.
Go for it.
I've got Shalom In The God, who is a interviewer. He works on The Breakfast Show, which is an American radio program, with two other presenters. But Shalom In The God, I really like his style of interviewing. And very recently, actually, within the past 2-3 weeks, he's been interviewing people like Joe Biden and Rush Limbaugh, who is and was an incredibly conservative commentator throughout the 90s, throughout George Bush's campaign. So he interviews the people that we need to be having conversations with right now, like Shalom the God, a black artist who's obviously incredibly passionate about this issue, interviewing Rush Limbaugh, who is saying straight to his face that he doesn't believe white privilege exists, and having that argument with him. I just feel it's a really essential thing to have those extremely opposing sides come together and have a conversation about something like this.
Definitely.
And really interestingly, I saw today in an interview that Charlemagne the God did with Stephen Colbert, he said that when Charlemagne the God, when he was interviewing Rush Limbaugh, he felt like the whole thing was just an act, and that he wasn't being very sincere, and he was just saying, yeah, white privilege, it doesn't exist, I can tell you why. And then off air, when he's like taking phone calls from listeners and stuff, and other black guys are asking Rush Limbaugh about white privilege, he then talks to them and says, yeah, I know, and he's seemingly understanding of the whole situation, but then as soon as he goes on public TV, he is just uninterested in the whole thing and pretends it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
So I think he, especially within the last couple of weeks, but over the years that he's been doing The Breakfast Show, The Breakfast Club, and the questions that he asks white political figures and white voices in the community is so important at the moment, I think, and really eye-opening as well. Like he asked Joe Biden about his racist voting record in the Congress. And that's just something that isn't asked of politicians in the main kind of big news corporations and stuff.
That's cool. I don't know if you. This is like slightly a weird diversion, but have you ever seen Hot Ones with Sean Evans? So Sean Evans is a white guy, so it's kind of unrelated, but I will link it back. And he does interviews with celebrities, and each like segment they eat chicken wings, and they start with really mild chicken wings, and then they get to like super spicy, which obviously is just like an interesting added thing anyway that you don't normally get in an interview. But his questions that he asks are so they're so far from interview questions that you would normally get in a normal interview. Like he must do so much research into them, and I find it so interesting, especially when he starts talking about things that they didn't know that anyone else knew, and he's like he drops a question like that. So I think it's one of those things that I really enjoy, aside from the fact that there's a gimmick where they eat chicken wings. I think he's a really good interviewer. Is it kind of like that? He asks questions that are not kind of questions that you don't normally hear from other interviewers. Yeah.
Again, going back to the politicalness of it all, I'm sorry. I think racism is such a personal issue, and when you have someone like Rush Limbaugh on your show as a black voice, I'm guessing you want to be able to personally get to that guy's views and really dig down into why he feels the way he feels about the black community and why white privilege doesn't exist. So asking those personal questions and having those really awkward conversations and calling out Joe Biden for being racist in his votes in the Congress, it embellishes the idea that regular people can be racist, or like normal looking people can be racist, and it happens all over the world all the time.
Definitely. I think especially with like social media becoming more of a thing, it's so easy for people to appear how they want to appear to the public, but then, you know, have a completely different agenda.
Exactly.
In person. Yeah, interesting.
That was a long one.
Or do you want to go next?
I'll go next.
You go next, okay.
Mine's first one is, I'm just going to say who she is and everyone will be like, oh yeah. But Whitney Houston.
Of course.
As one of them. She obviously has created amazing music, and she went, sadly, way too young. But I just think as a woman, she and a black female artist, she has created such an impact on the world globally. And she's so inspiring, and like the Bodyguard that then eventually turned into a film and a musical. And I just think her songs are great, and just as a woman, she's been through a lot. And yeah, like some of the interviews that she's had, like I remember watching a video the other day, and it's horrible. Can't remember who it is. Is it like is it like a German prime minister or something? She's on a talk show, and
no. It was you know the song, the French song that's like Je t'aime.
Oh yeah. It's that guy.
It's the guy that wrote that.
And I can't remember what he said. Does he call her like sexy or something? Or he calls her something.
He said, "I want to fuck her."
Yeah, I want to fuck her live on this interview.
Her face.
What?
And
you have to watch it. It's mad.
It is, and she takes it with a pinch of salt and carries on that interview so well. And this guy next to her is completely abusing her, basically.
He's absolutely hammered as well, which obviously doesn't excuse anything, but just to paint a picture of it.
He's also known for saying stuff like that, but I just think as a woman, she is so powerful and strong. And a black female as well. She is just so inspiring. So that's my first one.
Definitely. Similarly, again, on like just the endless list, I've got Grace Jones. Again, I don't want to kind of link 80s black women together like that. But she was similarly just a really strong subversion of all the stereotypes that were put on her. Like she was a queer, black, extremely strong woman. And every interview that she went into, the interviewer seemed to be so scared of her.
No way.
And similarly to Whitney Houston, I can't remember who said it, but I remember watching a black actor say something like, you can't be aggressive in the public eye because then the public will instantly label you as an aggressive black person. Like they will instantly link your aggressiveness to your race if you as a black person appear aggressive in that way in the public eye. I can't remember who said it, and that's bad in itself, but yeah, it's kind of similar that they have to be strong and composed, and I guess this must be this internal fight where they can't appear angry just because there will be this label put on them.
Yeah, I guess as well in the 80s that was that time of change as well, and it was those women coming through that had to make a stand.
Definitely.
And kind of label these black women and make them become these great performers that they are known for today.
Yeah.
And it works, like the marks that they've left. Well, for example, Whitney Houston, she has just left such a label behind. And it's like, even from a young age, I was like, you just know the Whitney Houston songs, don't you?
Yeah, definitely.
I
everyone
loved.
knows
I
at
used
least-
to sing her songs
at
like
least
all the
3
time when I was
probably.
younger.
Yeah.
They're great. So yeah, that was my first one.
Right. So my next one, slightly different. I've got two people that I've kind of put in one sort of category to talk about. So I've got Daveed Diggs and Leslie Odom Jr., who you might know from Hamilton. Daveed Diggs plays Thomas Jefferson and Lafayette, and Leslie Odom Jr. plays Aaron Burr. So yeah, I put these two together just because I was like, I don't know which one I wanted to talk about, and then I was sort of like, well, you know, it kind of comes under the umbrella of Hamilton. That's why I like them so much. So yeah, I'm gonna talk about both of them briefly, but just under that sort of Hamilton umbrella. Obviously Hamilton's like huge for it's such a great show for diversity. Like there's 2 white guys in it, I think, is when we saw it anyway. And especially because of like sort of the issues it addresses, you know, it's sort of early stages America when slavery was still very much a thing. And Lin-Manuel Miranda, who obviously also would be brilliant to talk about under this sort of section, said that he wanted the show to be a reflection on America today rather than America then. And also aside from that, obviously he said, I wrote it as a rap musical, so you know it should come from the people that invented rap and the, you know, the culture that it belongs to. But yeah, I picked these two because they are 2 parts that I would absolutely love to play but will never get the chance. The Thomas Jefferson's character is like super funny, and I don't really know how to describe him, but he's very camp, and yeah, I don't know, he's just got this like weird sort of 70s 80s type soul funk to his music, and Leslie Odom Jr. is just a badass in that show, and I also think there's something kind of great about black people playing parts of other people that would have hated that idea, you know what I mean? Like George Washington, for example, is played by a big black guy usually, and George Washington was known for having loads and loads of slaves, and they talk about it in the show. So I think there's something really nice about honouring these people as like amazing historical figures, but also saying, but your beliefs are kind of fucked up, so we're kind of honouring you, but also, you know, like crapping on your legacy at the same time.
Yeah, that's a whole interesting kind of conversation surrounding this whole thing as well, is like famous military guards from like the colonial wars and the Civil War, and just like statues of I can't remember their names. Yeah, just old kind of American historical figures who were actually very, very racist.
Yeah.
People are now realising that their views are abhorrent and kind of going, should we still remember them in the way that we do?
Yeah.
Should we still...
And it's difficult because it's kind of like, you think like, you know, society's progressed a lot in terms of the way that we think and the way that we like understand each other. So it's not excusing them for doing that sort of thing, but it's thinking like, well, if everyone has that mindset, then where do you sort of how do you look at it? Which obviously is something that, you know, like in an ideal world there would just be no racism and you'd be able to be like, oh yeah, they were a great figure because of this. But yeah, there's a really interesting documentary on Hamilton where they talk about the guy that plays George Washington. Actually, he said something along the lines of, I really admire this guy. Obviously, he built up the country that I now live in. And then he said, but also he kept slaves, and that's just something that I have to deal with. But it's an interesting sort of line to walk.
Cool. Like it. My next one is Richard Pryor, who
I almost put Richard Pryor.
incredibly famous comedian in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, like until his death, pretty much. I think in 2005, 2004, 2005, yeah. Yeah, just this incredibly funny man. Just obviously he's hilarious. He's won Grammys, he's won Emmys, he's been in so many films, like See No Evil, Hear No Evil, incredible film with Gene Wilder. There's something important about seeing the like horrifically hysterical nature of the 400-year historic racism of America. Like,
comedy's a coping mechanism.
Exactly. Like, yeah, it just talks about you need to bring some sort of light to it. But kind of like what I found most interesting about Richard Pryor and kind of his career, and then following on to Eddie Murphy, is that there was this element in every single interview he did, or any sort of chat show appearance he did, where the interview was asking him about him passing the torch on to Eddie Murphy in some way. Like, he was the one black comedian in that time, and he was he was done, and Eddie Murphy was coming up, and he had to pass the torch to Eddie Murphy, and Eddie Murphy will pass the torch to someone else.
Kevin Hart.
Exactly. Just like there's, I think there's two sides to it. Like, there's the side where I'm watching as a viewer, going like, how is there this picture that Richard Pryor is the only black comedian in this world, and he is passing the torch as the number one black comedian on to Eddie Murphy, and he'll pass it on to someone else. That's obviously ridiculous and awful and horrific.
Yeah.
But then, as Richard Pryor was talking about it in interviews, he was saying things like yeah, like black folks need people like me to feel like they can do stuff, and I will pass it on to Eddie Murphy, and he'll make millions of black folks feel the same way, and he'll pass it on to someone else and do the same thing. So I think, like pretty much every other argument in this conversation, there are two.
Yeah, it's just a shame there's not like
two views to it.
300 Richard Pryors, you know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like the fact that I was able to pull Kevin Hart out of the air because.
Exactly.
Can you think of any other funny black?
I was gonna say Michael Che, because he kind of does similar things with the Black Lives Matter movement and bringing his like funny sides to the awfulness of it.
Yeah.
Will Smith.
But you're right in the fact that there's
a handful.
Much like every other kind of actor or director or blank, you can say, oh, black, blank.
Black, definitely.
He is a black comedian. This is a group of black directors.
Speaking of like comedy stuff, have you guys seen Black Klansman?
No, I need to.
So recommend it. It's so good, so funny.
Was that Spike Lee?
That was, yeah.
Yeah, he's incredible.
And he stormed out at the Oscars, I think, didn't he? Because didn't get
I love it.
the award. But regardless of that, it's a really, really good film, really funny. But you just reminded me of it with Hear No Evil, See No Evil. Yeah, that is a good shout. I so nearly put Richard Pryor.
Yeah, I think he was just so funny and so important in giving a voice to the community, and also kind of reflecting the awful views in a funny way. Yeah. And the whole interesting nature of passing the torch, etc.
Okay, so my next one is a bit. Okay, he's an artist of some sort. He's a footballer.
That's fine.
But it's Rio Ferdinand, who.
I guess when we say artist, I guess we kind of mean black public figures, influential figures. So Rio Ferdinand was I remember him at my very first Manchester United game that I watched. And Anna's a big Man U fan.
I'm a massive Man U fan. I think my first Man United game was like I was 4, 5, and my dad took me. He has been within the football industry for years. And I just want to say Manchester United have a very big anti-racial support background. They do a lot, and to this day they have a lot of mixed race players. But Rio Ferdinand was around, I think, from 2002 to 2014, so an extremely long time. He was with Manchester United. He was with a couple of lower league football teams before that, but he left in 2014. I think his story is just so inspirational. His wife got cancer and died in 2015, and he got left with his kids, but he has decided to use this as a positive to express how he feels and his story through autobiographies, and he even had his own TV documentary on his life and how it looked and everything. So he's done books and everything. He has set up loads of charities. He's even had he's even worked with Manchester United and set up a team called the Dream Foundation. And his own background is he grew up not very wealthy because of his colour and things like that. But then, look, he's managed to play for one of the most successful teams in the world, if I say so myself.
And become one of the most famous teams of that.
Yeah.
I know nothing about football, but I know who he is.
Yeah. The Dream Foundation is basically supporting kids that live in not the wealthiest of backgrounds, and supports them to play football if they enjoy it and get that training and coaching that they need, which is amazing. But also Rio Ferdinand just doesn't do that. He supports, he presents a lot of sports programs. He does a lot for like the Olympics when that comes on, or like Match of the Days and things like that. So he's always around, and he's just one of those figures that you just know, like you said, you know who he is. He's played for England as well, obviously. And he's won he's been on lots of winning teams for England and Manchester United, like the World Cups and things. He's just, I think, for me and my family, he's been around a lot in this household just because of my background and like the background of us liking football. I just think he's gone through a lot, but has gone, instead of just being like, feel sorry for me that this has all happened to me, like I've come from a horrible background, my wife's died of cancer. He's not done that at all. He has kind of flipped it around on its head and always looked at a positive view on life, which I love. Nice. So
my next one is possibly the happiest man to have ever lived, ever. Terry Crews, famous for being an NFL player.
That was the actor who said he couldn't be aggressive on set because, or in interviews, because they would link the aggressiveness to his race. That was him.
Terry Crews. He is. I've listened to a lot of stuff with Terry Crews just because I think he's fantastic. Brooklyn Nine-Nine is one of possibly my favourite TV show. So I find it interesting to listen to him and sort of watch him on screen. Another reason as well that I like Brooklyn Nine-Nine so much, I think, is because it's like an ensemble cast of like 7 or 8, and within that cast there are 2 black men and 2 Latino women, and then there's like 2 white guys as well. So it's a very it's a very forward-thinking TV show, and they do a podcast which I've listened to a couple of episodes of, and it's really interesting that Melissa Fumero and Stephanie Beatrice, who are the 2 Latino women, it was interesting listening to their conversation because they were just waiting for one of them to get fired, because they were like, there's no way they're going to let 2 Latino leads on network television. So they were like changing the way their hair was and stuff for the table read so that they would stand out, and that was just really interesting to listen to.
Wow.
But Terry Crews was talking on one of the episodes that there's a fantastic episode called Moo Moo, which is like we were talking about it with the last one. One thing Brooklyn Nine-Nine do really well is they will take a really, really serious issue and they'll do a 20-minute comedy show about it. Without undermining it, they'll say, this is a horrible issue, let's look at the funny side of it, but also push home why this is such an issue. They did one called Show Me Going, which was about mass shootings in America. They did one called He Said, She Said, which was about the Me Too movement. Their captain that runs their precinct is black and gay, so that's like more of a theme rather than episode that they deal with. But Moo Moo, the episode that Terry Crews was talking about, is an episode where
it's gone quite viral, hasn't it, this one?
At the moment, yeah, definitely. Because there was a TikTok that was like Brooklyn Nine-Nine explaining systematic racism in less than a minute, and it's super funny as well. So Terry's character, he's called Terry in the show as well. They wrote the part for him, which is another like super interesting thing about it. Terry's character has 2 kids, and Jake and Amy, who are 2 of the leads as well, agree to look after the kids while he does something, I can't remember what, and one of the kids drops a toy she has out the window that's called Moo Moo. So he goes to find it later on in the evening. He like retraces their footsteps, and he gets racially profiled by another police officer, and he doesn't have his badge on him, so he can't prove that it's him. And then he says he's going to report the officer that racially profiled him, but the captain, who's also black, advises him not to because he thinks it's going to hurt his opportunity to progress in the NYPD, which is a really interesting stance to take on it, because it's a black person saying maybe it's best to not report every single person, but in the long run try and make a difference. But anyway, yeah, that's it's a fantastic episode. It's really, really funny and really poignant at the moment, especially, and I definitely recommend you watch it. But while they were talking about that episode on a podcast, Terry Crews, I think it's a Winston Churchill quote that he was talking about that I just found really interesting, was that he said with stuff like racism, it's really with everything, but obviously he was applying it to that, is that it's not people being wrong or right, it's people knowing that their opinion is right, and that complete ignorance that anyone else's opinion is wrong. It's like all to do with self-righteousness. It's a really, really interesting episode to listen to, and it's a really great episode of the TV show to watch as well. Aside from that, Terry Crews obviously is a very famous black guy, but it's not his personality, you know what I mean? He's known for being super ripped, but also like a big teddy bear, and just super happy and progressive and forward thinking. So yeah, that also was a bit of a long one, but I thought it was an important plug for Brooklyn Nine-Nine. There you go, Terry Crews.
Cool. My next one, Ava DuVernay. She is a film director and has made lots of documentaries. I think most notably The 13th, which is a Netflix documentary about the 13th Amendment, which goes very, very deeply into the historical racism of America, and really importantly kind of links it event by event from the beginning to the present. Like it goes from slavery all the way through each single president, through each law that they made, and why it affected the black community, and how much it did, and it just goes so far into that. But at the same time, she directed A Wrinkle in Time, and she became the first black female director to make a movie but that grossed over $100 million. So she is a kind of inspiration to those people as well. But interestingly, I think I don't know whether saying things like she is the first black woman to direct a live action film earning $100 million at the US box office, like, that's amazing and something to look up to, but it also reminds you of how sad it is.
Yeah, I can't believe we're saying this in like 2020.
Yeah.
Or 2018 or whatever it came out. But yeah, she like the interviews she has, she's so well, like she talks in such a, she's so well elocuted, is that the word? Well spoken. I don't know. She just has this really calm demeanor, and she just explains things and talks about things, but she's equally as passionate, and she's just an amazing woman. And the films she makes are great, and she worked on Selma, became the first black woman to be nominated for a Golden Globe for Best Director, and have her film nominated for an Academy Award as well.
Wow.
So her whole career pretty much is focused on on telling the story of the black community, and in ways that have changed how we see it, like in Selma and the 13th. So yeah.
And she's almost like the breakthrough, isn't she? Of
Yeah,
like being the first woman to do this, the first woman to
absolutely
black woman to do this. That's so interesting. I didn't know that, and I didn't know how late that was.
Yeah, like it took, within 4 years, from 2014 to 2018, she'd become the first black woman to be nominated for a Golden Globe, the first black woman to have her film nominated for an Academy Award for Best Picture, and the first black woman
That's
to
insane.
direct a live-action film earning over $100 million in 4 years.
What?
It's crazy.
Like,
Mad.
oh.
Yeah.
I think that brings up a whole other issue as well of just sort of like women in the entertainment industry that maybe we'll get onto another time.
Yes.
But, yeah, that's so interesting. That's,
Wow.
But yeah, I think that in itself, and the way that she just has this sole focus on bringing that horrible nature of that side to light to the whole white audience of Hollywood, I guess, and the majority of the Academy and Golden Globe boards, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, really inspirational woman, really cool, really awesome movies.
Cool.
Oh, awesome. My next one, if anyone listening has ever studied dance in some sort of way, you will know who this person is.
Nope.
I would have studied him. Alvin Ailey. Do you know? Have you heard that name, Jake?
No.
Oh, great!
Do explain.
Tom knows who this is. He didn't study dance, but he's been
He's
part
just
of
really
A-level
smart.
dance. He just loves this sort of thing. Alvin Ailey is a very within the dance industry, I guess, is such a successful man and such a inspirational man within, well, not just within the dance industry, but it's just he's got such a fascinating story to tell. He obviously grew up in the black community. He started from scratch his own dance company. They had the worst stages they performed on. They had the worst rehearsal spaces, if they even had a rehearsal space. This was back in the 40s, I think it started. It's called the Alvin Ailey Dance Theatre Company, and the progression this theatre company has is so incredible. Like, to this day, they have their own so obviously they've started from scratch. Now to this day they have their own Alvin Ailey Dance Theatre Company in New York.
They're probably one of the biggest dance companies in the world.
Yeah, they're now probably
Yeah.
one of the biggest dance companies in the world. They're so successful. They tour across the world globally. I would love to. They come to the UK quite a lot and go to like the Sadler's Wells Theatre and stuff. But their performances are so emotional and brilliant in an abstract way of telling you black stories, and the like all the like slavery that they went through, and all just like the progression of black history, and a lot of the dances are quite famous to this day, and they still perform the same dances to this day, even though it was in the 40s, 50s that they even created these pieces. They still are being performed today because they are so popular. One of them, just for example, is called Revelations, which I think Revelations is, if I can remember, it is almost three separate dances but in a show. And I remember having to perform one for my A-level dance piece, and it's just about being free. That's all. Yeah. That's all the dance piece is about. But I did quite well on that exam because it's all about emotion and stuff. And I think that's why I liked Alvin Ailey so much, because a lot of dances, I guess, are. I think a lot of contemporary dances as well are quite emotionless. There's not much emotion to them sometimes, and it's quite bland. But with Alvin Ailey's, you can just see the story before you unfold with all these dances. Obviously, back in the day, it was just black people that performed. It wasn't exclusive, but obviously no white people wanted to join a black dance company. Like, that was stupid. But obviously, with the success it has today, loads of multicultural people perform there, and I think it is such like the fact you could even get to dance there is such an honour and a privilege. And I just think the journey that they've had is so amazing and powerful.
I can imagine it's hard for any men now, even, let alone 60, 70 years ago, to express any type of emotion, let alone a young black man in the black community in the 40s wanting to express his emotions through dance. Like that is just unheard of.
And it wasn't easy as well. They did obviously get a lot of hate and disgust. It wasn't easy. It wasn't like people were welcoming to this dance company. It was awful. But yeah, Alvin Ailey, he passed away in the 70s, I believe. But they've always had black directors.
Awesome.
Yeah. We just say sorry if you can hear. They've decided to chop down a whole forest outside the window. So sorry if you can hear that. We're just fine. Yeah. We'll just go with it.
That's symbolism.
Yeah.
Somehow.
Yeah. We'll do deforestation another week.
But yeah, I was so obsessed with that story at school and learning about it. He worked with a lot of people like Martha Graham and Judith Jamison, who are very famous dancers. Catherine Dunham. They're all and like Cunningham as well. They're all, if you know dance, they're all amazing techniques to this day, that the biggest dance schools use. And yeah, it's all Alvin Ailey was a part of that journey for all of them. And he's just within the dance industry. It's huge, isn't it, Alvin? It is massive, and I just have so much respect for that company, and I love that it's such a successful company, and yeah,
definitely,
it's great.
Cool. My next one is a black icon and also a massive LGBTQ icon, Q+, sorry, I should say. RuPaul.
Oh yeah.
Have you got RuPaul on yours, Jake? Yeah, yep. I did wonder. What more is there to say, really, other than RuPaul is RuPaul?
Just the biggest inspiration to queer folk.
He represents so many specific oppressed groups of people all across the world.
And I think the one thing I think he really gets right is humanizing people. I think obviously the root of any sort of hatred is dehumanizing another group of people, and the more you can humanize a queer black young guy from Alabama, the more people in Alabama can see young queer black guys in Alabama as people, as humans, and not as the idea that their grandparents put in their head.
Definitely. Yeah, I think also, like, he blurs that line between male and female, like, and the whole sort of throws up in the air the whole idea of gender, which is a huge discussion at the moment. And I think he is such a target of hate for so many people that just don't understand, why people like dressing up as women, or vice versa, or why people don't feel comfortable in their gender, and they maybe want to transition, or gender fluidity. And like we said, to add on top of all that, he's black. So yeah, I think it's great. It's horrible, obviously, that he has to be a target of hate in the first place. But I think because he is, and because he's so empowering and so popular, it's fantastic, and he's amazing, and he's really funny.
And can I just say, she is absolutely gorgeous. She is like a better woman than I am. Every time I see a picture of her, I'm like, oh my god, like,
that's what earning $100 million a week will get you.
Yeah, she looks insane.
Yeah, but genuinely, she's incredible.
Yeah, she's beautiful.
One thing I love about RuPaul's Drag Race, the TV show, is that they have a celebrity judge on every week, and the variety of people they get on, you would think like, it's all going to be queer icons, but like Andrew Garfield was a judge.
Yeah, and Joel McHale.
Yeah.
And like really weird people come on.
That's great,
but it's amazing.
It's amazing. It's so good. And he, like I said, he's really, really funny.
And just the fact that there is kind of like they're literally throwing out labels all over the place. So there is no chance to be hooked up or like hung up on anybody's race.
Definitely.
So like that's just the way forward. It's just to be throwing out all these labels and not focusing on the things that aren't important.
I also feel like if anyone said anything to his face, he would just have the perfect comeback, no matter how big or small. So I feel like he is such a good representative of a group that's going to piss off a lot of people, but good. If you're pissed off, then then something's not right.
And he really seems to understand his position as the queen of drag, as the face of drag, as the icon that he is.
Definitely. Yeah. Okay.
Similarly, I've kind of my next one is Janelle Monáe, who bends those labels, who brings another version of the stereotype placed on her by other people. She's just such an inspiration to so many people. She has amazing albums and goes really deep into those horrible topics, and the characters that she seems to play in the films that she's in also reflect those same kind of powerful storylines, like in Hidden Figures. Just kind of, I wasn't aware of really Janelle Monáe until like 2016. She was in an album, she featured on an album of Paolo Nutini's, and then she was in Moonlight in 2016 and Hidden Figures in the same year, I think. So, but yes, Janelle Monáe, fantastic woman, love her.
Cool. This one is he's a famous West End star. He won an Olivier Award for the role that he did. He is called Matt Henry, who played Lola in Kinky Boots.
Nice. I didn't realise he won an Olivier, actually.
Yeah, he won Best Male Actor for Olivier. Wow. He was the original Lola. So he's the one you hear on the British cast recording. I didn't see him when he was in the West End, but I saw the performance, the recorded performance that they did, and they had Matt Henry and Cillian Donnelly come back to play their roles as Charlie and Lola. Lola as a character, I think, is a great role. Again, it's to do with that queer community as well as being black, and dealing with both situations within society. I can't remember when is Kinky Boots set? Is it the 90s? 90s?
I
80s?
don't think they really specified, do
No.
they?
Yeah, it's like Northern England a couple of decades ago.
Yeah.
So for those people who don't know what Kinky Boots is about, Kinky Boots is about a boy called Charlie who has to run his father's shoe factory after his father dies, but the factory's running into the ground, so he tries to come up with something new, and he meets a fascinating person called Lola, who's very different in her own way, and he has the idea to create men's high heel shoes, high heel boots, and that's what the story's all about, and promoting that and the success that has. And it's based on a true story, isn't it?
Yeah.
But Matt Henry as Lola is phenomenal. I remember that performance and getting goosebumps of how good of an actor he was. You could just see, and I guess as well when you watch a live performance at the cinema, you can, when you zoom in on a person and their emotions, it was just very. I will always remember that performance being so good. Like Cillian Donnelly's good as Charlie, but I think Lola's just such a more complex character.
Lola's a harder character to do well.
And to nail that part, you have to be someone very special.
Yeah. It's set in 2005.
Set in 2005. Oh my gosh.
That's when the film was made, and that's what Google says.
So we've all seen it, haven't we, Kinky Boots? Jake, have you seen it? Yeah.
Seen it twice.
Yeah.
Seen it twice.
But Matt Henry is so phenomenal, and he promotes a lot of stuff on social media to do with Pride, as well as obviously the black community. And I think he's so inspirational in the fact he's great at dealing with both, and he's obviously not as successful as RuPaul or anything like that, but he still supports. So I'm just kind of appreciating an actor that is obviously incredible in what he does.
Well, it's maybe good that he's not as big, because it's more of a achievable kind of figure to look up to. You know what I mean? Like, it's more realistic for a young black person to look up to someone. It's good to have, like the President of the United States, and then also like a slightly more localized.
And he's always so active on things. Like, if there's ever a performance to support something, you can guarantee like he will be there to do stuff. And it's just brilliant, and I'll never forget that Kinky Boots performance that he did. He was amazing, and I'm glad it's on record somewhere, and hopefully you can get a DVD of it, because if you ever get the chance to watch it, his performance is just phenomenal.
My next one is Mahershala Ali.
Nice.
One of my favourite actors. He was in Moonlight, he was in Into the Spider-Verse, he's going to be Blade in the new Blade remake.
Is he?
That Marvel.
That is such a good call. Yeah. Oh my god. He's going to be such a good Wesley Snipes.
At Comic-Con, obviously Marvel announced loads of stuff at Comic-Con, but and people waiting to hear about the Fantastic Four and the X-Men and stuff like that. And then
he was in. Oh, sorry.
No, carry on.
I was going to say he's in Green Book as well.
He's in Green Book as well. Yeah, I love that film. But yeah, no. When the MCU were at Comic-Con, they brought on like loads and loads of stars, because obviously they'd announced all the Disney Plus stuff as well, and they're like, the MCU is only just getting started. We've got so much more that we're gonna bring to you guys. And obviously everyone was going nuts, and they were like, oh yeah, you already knew about the Disney series, so here's Tom Hiddleston. They brought out all the actors you could possibly think of in Marvel, and then they were like, oh yeah, and by the way, surprise, we're doing a Blade reboot, and Mahershala Ali is here as Blade, and he just came on the stage and put the cap on. I can't remember. I'm pretty sure he won the Oscar for Moonlight, or at least he was nominated for an Oscar for Moonlight. Yeah. And he was in that film for maybe 20 minutes. Like, that's how good he is. He's like barely in the film, but he won the Oscar. Mahershala Ali.
Nice. I guess we're on to honourable mentions.
Honourable mentions.
Yeah, I guess I've got like Michelle Obama, Barack Obama,
Yeah, I got the
They're
Obamas.
just incredible people. Beyonce and Jay-Z, I
Yep.
think their last album together was amazing, and Black Effect on the last album is an incredible song about the racial injustice in America. Like, they scream to the audience to put their hands up and have a great time, but they're putting their hands up. I'll try and find the lyrics actually, because it's really, really insane. Yeah, so they just talk about get your hands up high like a false arrest. Let me see them up high. This is not a test. Yeah, put them up high. This is not a test. Now hands where I can see them. Fuck a false arrest. And that's all shouting to the audience to have a great time, but also like, yeah, it's just incredible music where that image is being put across at the same time.
Definitely.
But numero uno, kind of the artist that I have the most interaction with, I guess, and know the most about, I guess, is Donald Glover, aka Childish Gambino, and all the albums that he's released and the just all the art that he's been involved in. I think through his albums, Awaken My Love, I think was really, really I think it started the conversation in his music about that, and then in his most recent album 03, 15, 19 or 20 even, sorry, it really, really goes into similar things like Black Effect, like I was talking about, like he has these conversations about the violence that is happening in America. Obviously, This Is America was the masterpiece that he brought out, and there's thousands of things in that music video where
it's all references to
it's
stuff,
all references,
isn't it?
yeah, like his outfit, like, and especially with all the school shootings and public shootings that were happening year in, year out over those years, no one had really reflected how awful that was in such a blasé way before. Like, there's been hundreds of thousands of videos and people talking about the ins and outs of This Is America, but it just is an explanation of how horrible America still is, and how the shooting and mistreatment of black folk goes hidden under the rug for too long. But one of the songs, I'm just going to take a serious moment to read the whole song of an album off Childish Gambino's new album, because it's short, it just sounds like a poem. But it's called 4748, and it just goes, little girl, 13, broke down, the violence. Little boys playing around, shot down, the violence, the violence. Baby girl, baby daddy, he's had it, the violence, the violence, the violence, the violence. Cut him up in the gang, did the same, the violence, the violence. Don't worry about tomorrow, the violence, the violence. Don't worry about tomorrow, the violence, the violence. Beat him up, keep him down, light him up, the violence. Never say what you see, keep quiet, the silence, the silence. Little boy, little girl, are you scared of the world? Is it hard to live? Just take care of your soul, let the beauty unfold, you'll get through it. Don't worry about tomorrow, the violence, the violence. Don't worry about tomorrow, the violence, the violence. And that's the whole song. But it's put under this beat that is smooth, that is funky, and you want to dance along to it, and then at the end, it's just him and his really young son talking about who they love and the people that they love, and looking for hope in the world, I guess. So it's just this really awesome song about the awful historic racism in America, whilst making you want to dance and having an optimistic ending at the same time, with his son talking about the people that he loves in the world and the things that brings him joy. So I just think how you can put all that into 3 minutes and 50 seconds, I have no idea. So yeah,
he's
why I
incredible.
love him so much. He's amazing.
He almost made my list, but I didn't put him down purely for the fact that I knew someone else was going to put it. So I was like, well, I'll put another person, because then it's another person to talk about. But yeah, I love him. And not to mention that aside from all his sort of music and stuff, he is a stand-up comedian and a screenwriter. He wrote for 30 Rock at the age of like 22 or something like that.
Yeah, like he got hired by Tina Fey after like a stand-up gig. Like,
he's so funny.
Everyone listen to all his music and watch all his things and go, yeah, it's amazing.
He covers almost like every type of art there is out there.
Pretty much.
Music,
Pretty much,
comedy, film.
I think
really.
he's just got to paint a masterpiece, and now he's done.
Yeah.
And do an opera.
Or-
and then
Yeah, win a Tony.
He's covered. My honourable mentions are obviously Martin Luther King,
of
of
course.
course. The Obamas. I put Oprah Winfrey.
Yeah.
She's a
Great
great
one.
woman. And I also put Morgan Freeman because, again, great actor. In there, and he probably has the best voice in the world ever, I would say. So there you go.
Yeah, that's fair.
But my number one is Beyonce. What a woman. I what else is like there to say about her? Like, I mean, the one thing that I think that is amazing for me about her is how much hard work she has put to where she is today. Yeah, I remember like when I was in training for musical theatre, like my singing teacher was always like, "Oh guys, you've had it so easy." Like Beyonce would, like her dad would make her run against the car every morning and she had to sing. Like, what? That's insane. Like, that's why she's got the biggest lungs in the entire world, because her dad made her get up at 4 a.m. every morning. He had to drive the car. She had to run along against the car and sing at the top of her lungs every day.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Mad, isn't it?
But look at where she is today.
Yeah.
Probably one of the biggest icons of all time.
I think the biggest icon in the world.
Yeah, she's gorgeous.
Like I think there's no one with a presence or like a.
There's no one else whose name gets auto-corrected on your phone.
No. Yeah. Like that. She's a goddess. Like, she is a goddess.
Yeah. If there was anyone that could like define a woman, Beyonce would be a good example. She's just awesome, and she only lives down the road.
I know, right?
When she comes to the
yeah,
UK.
she lives
She's mates. We got her coming over for a barbecue in a couple of weeks.
Yeah. Jay-Z, he's bringing around a
Got the whole
six-pack
lot,
of Carling.
whole crew.
And it was like my mum the other day was watching Dreamgirls, and
Love that
Beyonce in
film.
that. You're just like, oh my god, like, wow,
Yeah,
it's insane
incredible,
to see
incredible.
it like to where she is today. It's
And I think-
just phenomenal.
Yeah, and I think it is like when Anyway, that I wasn't going to say anything. Ignore me.
Oh, just she's great.
It's a good show.
I love her.
Really, really awesome.
My honourable mentions. I went off on a bit of a tangent here, so just bear with me. I got led down a rabbit hole of thinking of like, oh, I love this person and I want to mention them, but I can't talk about them. So I've got Andre Braugher from Brooklyn Nine-Nine, Titus
Nice.
Burgess,
Oh,
Yes. Oh my God. Yes.
Mindy Kaling from The Office and other stuff. She's an amazing screenwriter. Caleb McLaughlin, who is Lucas in Stranger Things. Levi Stubbs, who's the voice of Audrey 2 in Little Shop of Horrors.
Yeah.
Yvette Nicole Brown and Danny Pudi.
Yes.
Kendrick Lamar, Craig Robinson.
Kendrick Lamar. Yes.
Steve Harvey, because he
Steve
hosts he hosts the American Family Fortunes, and he's just a meme.
Yeah.
And he's so funny. Key and Peele, Samuel L. Jackson,
Yeah.
Sterling K. Brown, and Richard Ayoade.
Oh my God, Richard Ayoade. Yes.
One great thing about the IT crowd as well is that, and unfortunately I'm having to say that this is a great thing, which is kind of gross, but I don't think they mention once that he's black.
No.
It's not mentioned, it's not referenced.
Not an episode about it or
Nope.
anything.
I was torn between two people and I didn't know which one I wanted to talk about. So Salt and Pepper made my honourable mention, because I love salt and pepper. I like not the seasonings,
Push it.
the musical artists. I love their music. It's fantastic. But someone whose music I think has been just around a lot more for me recently is Lizzo. I love Lizzo's music. It's so easy to listen to, and it's one of those songs you'll hear once, like from her album, and you'll be like, oh yeah, that's stuck in my head, and I don't know any of the words, I just know the tune. And she's overweight, but she uses it as to her advantage. You know, she enjoys sort of promoting body positivity, and she's very comfortable in her own body. She
doesn't give in to the
kind of,
expectations of her, or of a famous person or a famous woman in that light.
Definitely, yeah. And a lot of her music is about like loving yourself, and less so about, you know, the whole sort of race issue, which is refreshing, I guess. I mean, there's a song that she has called Better in Colour, which is like love looks better in colour.
I love that song.
Which is a great song. So
I think like there are places for artists, especially to, like, for example, like I was talking about with Jay-Z and Beyonce and Childish Gambino. There's a place for artists to express these awful things very bluntly, and then there's also a place for artists like Lizzo to express the humanity.
She's so positive about everything.
The positive outlook of it.
Here's one of my favourite songs from Lizzo. Is called Soulmate, and I love this song because it's about finding your soulmate, kind of, but the way that she approaches the song, which is just really interesting, is that she is her own soulmate. Like, she doesn't need anyone else, it's just her. And just try and find the lyrics. It's like, because I'm my own soulmate, I know how to love me, I know that I'm always going to hold me down. I'm my own soulmate, I'm never lonely, I know I'm a queen, but I don't wear no crown. Look up in the mirror like, damn, she's the one. It's just, and it's just really refreshing to have a big, like a physically big woman not care about how the media and press and public see her, and just be like, you know what, I'm a large woman and I am perfectly comfortable in my own skin. I don't need validation from other people. And, you know,
we like, again, I don't know if it's straying from the issue, but kind of, we always constantly see in tabloid magazines and newspapers like The Sun and everything, it supposedly is newsworthy when people when women show off their skin or their body parts, or have lost weight or have gained weight or have anything like that. Like, apparently that is news. So it's so refreshing to be like, to have a celebrity be like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, that's not news. Like,
definitely.
Like, what?
And she also plays the flute. She's just the coolest woman ever. And there's a really great video of her online where she's like, she's like halfway through one of her songs, and she does like this wicked flute solo, and then she finishes playing it, and then she's just like, bitch, and then carries on. It's so funny.
I am always surprised when anyone tells me they play the flute. Like, doesn't matter who it is. I'm like, that's a really odd instrument to want to play, but it's so cool though.
Good for you.
And she's got a really interesting past. Like, I think I might be telling this wrong, so by all means go and research this if you're interested, but she was in like the marching band at school, which is why she plays flute, and it was a choice between her having to stay with her like marching band or go off and do her own thing and work on her sort of rap and music career, and she picked that, and it was obviously the right choice.
Wow, thank God she did that.
Now she's a very famous black icon, and yeah, she's great. She's just super cool, and she doesn't give a shit.
We could talk for hours and hours.
We could.
Couldn't we?
But yeah, again, it's kind of not. You shouldn't listen to us. You should listen to this, and then go and listen to all the other things that we've just said.
Definitely.
Because especially with all of the horribleness and misinformation that's going around, the best thing you can do is educate yourself.
We're supporting black people as much as we can, because, you know, I think we can't change what white people have had a history of doing. So
Yeah.
all we can do is support everyone and try and move on positively.
Yeah.
That being said, we've got some charities that we want to talk about. If you're stuck on furlough and you've got money burning a hole in your pocket like all of us do, I don't know, don't buy something that you're going to get bored of after a couple of hours. Go and donate to a charity that's going to make a difference. My chosen charity for this episode is called Show Racism the Red Card. You can go on their website, which is theredcard.org. We'll link all of these in the description, so have a look on there for them. There's a lot of focus on racism in the US at the moment. Obviously, like we said, the whole sort of death of George Floyd and everything happening in Minnesota, but also, in many other, in every other state, unfortunately, in America. Show Racism the Red Card, though, are a UK charity. I thought it was important to give a UK charity because I think it's easy to forget at the moment that this is a global issue rather than just in the US. So they're a charity that go into schools and educate kids with sort of workshops and training sessions.
Wow.
And stuff like that. And I think, I think that's a good place to start, with the next generation. I think they're also linked to football as well. They use high profile status, the high profile status of football and football players to publicise its message across Britain. So go and check those out.
I've got Reclaim the Block, which is more of a direct support system to Minneapolis and Minnesota, and is solely based in there. But what they focus on is the aftermath of huge protests and huge changes in policy or just anything like that has so many people kind of angry or frustrated or in that sort of state. Just type in Reclaim the Block. It says the crisis facing our city in Minneapolis, Minnesota, like housing shortages, addiction and violence in our communities, need real investment. Reclaim the Block is calling on our city to invest in violence prevention, housing, resources for youth, emergency mental health response teams, and solution to the opioid crisis, and to protest damaging businesses all around the city. We have no option but to start now. They just help with the aftermath of things like this, which often get forgotten, especially things like mental health support and business support for those businesses that were affected in the protests as well. But Reclaim the Block.
My charity that I'm going to talk about is the Bail Project. It is in America, just so you know, but it is a charity that has money to help bail innocent protesters out of prison when they can't afford the money to get out of prison. But it's like, here's how the money works. So the bail is set, bail is paid, the bail returns to the fund at the end of the client's case, and the bail money is used then to free someone else. So it's like kind of a recycling thing. So the more money they can donate, the more they can help many people, especially at the moment. Loads of protesters are being arrested. So it's just getting them out and freeing them. Yeah,
but if you can't donate, you don't feel like you have to. Just you can read. If you can't read, you can listen. If you can't listen, you can watch something. And
people are urging people to write to local PMs as well, and sort of address the issue,
especially in England, where we have a tendency not to talk about this issue.
Definitely, we have a tendency not to talk about a lot of things. Unfortunately. There's so much you can do.
If we've said anything, if you said anything wrong, if we've mentioned things that are insensitive, please do tell us. Like, it's all about educating each other on what's right and what's wrong, and
it's a conversation.
Everyone's perspective, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thanks for listening. We will see you next time on Whitmore Podcast.
Yes.
Where we're back to our regular schedule.
We are, yeah.
See you then.
Bye.
Bye.
They're being so loud. They've literally been
I
going.
can hear them.
They've literally been going since
That's
like 8
mad.
a.m. this morning. Like I woke up to this. It's like great.
And it's not even. It's like the house across the road. Why do they want to cut trees down?